I'm Lindsay Lippman, and this is Texas Voices, the podcast, a production of Central Texas News Now in Waco, Texas. That saying, all hat, no cattle? Well, that ain't Ryan Bingham. The Texas-raised artist knocked out his front teeth bull riding and always wanted to be a cowboy. At 16, his mother gave him a guitar.
I knew I was afraid. There was nothing to gain, I found by running the other way. I had to stand my ground, keep the wolves at bay.
The Oscar and Grammy-winning singer-songwriter has a new album, American Love Song, and resumes his role as a ranch hand on the hit new drama Yellowstone on the Paramount Network. He's in the prime of his life, not because of any award or recognition. We sat down at One World Theater in Austin before his solo show to talk about what really matters in life.
Thank you for letting us come out here. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, you bet.
Have you been enjoying these kind of intimate shows that you've been doing? You already did Dallas, right?
No, I did.
Houston next?
This is the first of the Texas shows. I'm going to San Antonio tomorrow, and then to Dallas, and then Houston for the last one.
So tell me why you decided during this break of filming, I guess, you're like, let's go do a couple of shows.
Well, I got a new record that's coming out in February, and I've got a lot of new songs, and they're very ballad-driven, you know, a lot of story songs, and have a lot of stories that come with them about why I wrote them. So just kind of wanted to get out and start playing them live a bit and getting a feel for how people are reacting to them. You know, I always, you know, if you want to know if you got a good song or not, you go play it for some people. They let you know real quick whether it's any good or not. You know? So it's good to get out here and play some songs and see how they're going over, and then just tell some stories about what they're about. I've had fans over the past few years just, you know, just asking me about what the songs are about, you know, and as I've been telling a few of these stories live and seeing the reactions to them and seeing what people get out of them, just kind of encourages me to share more with people. So.
Is that why you do it? Do you do it? Yeah. Do you, when you make music, do you make it for yourself or do you make it for people, or both?
You know, as I've gotten older, I feel like I write more and more about other people as I've gotten older. When I first started, it was very much an internal thing of things were very personal that, you know, I was writing about, and I didn't really intend to play the songs for anybody. A lot of the stuff I was just writing to get off my chest. So as I've, you know, started to get out and play more for people and hear how they interpret the songs into their own stories and what they mean to them, and how impactful it can be on somebody's life, I understand how, I don't know, I just have a certain respect for that, you know, and appreciate that somebody's getting something out of that song, and if it's helping them in some way deal with something that they may have gone through that was familiar to the situation that I wrote the song about, or whatnot, you know, so it's grown into that more, I say.
How do you find the words? Do you feel like they're always just there, floating around, just waiting, or?
You know, it's most songs that I write that I consider to be some of the ones that are most impactful or that have the most meaning are songs that I've written in 5 minutes, you know, where they just all come out, like not even writing them down, but just saying them out loud, like, you know, just a thought, and then writing them down after the fact. All the songs that I've had to kind of hunt down, and, you know, I've never been the kind of writer where I can sit down with a pen and paper and just formulate out, you know, something that has to be just a rush of, you know, a feeling.
And kind of organic, like just letting it happen, not forcing it or making it happen.
Yeah.
Was there ever a time when you tried to fit into the mold of what you thought an artist should be, or have you always just allowed yourself to be who you are, try to find that sweet spot?
Yeah, I feel like I've always just kind of remained open. I think that, you know, some of the guys and gals that I looked up to when I was starting to write songs, guys like Towns Van Zandt and Guy Clark, some of the local Texas guys, you know, when I got into it were, you know, very much in that vein. Terry Allen was a very big influence on me too, and just kind of their outlook on the world and their sense of humor and things like that really resonated with me more than the kind of commercial line of work, and just kind of where I come from and how I grew up too. So I've always been I don't know, had a bit of a rebellious attitude.
Well, you probably couldn't bullshit if you tried.
Exactly.
If you tried
I mean,
to bullshit, then it would be like, what?
Yeah.
Who are you? What are you doing?
That didn't go over in the kind of places I played at. You know,
No.
you know, a lot of the bars and roadhouses and playing at the rodeo. You know, on the trailer. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, most people went there to get drunk and fight, not listen to music. So,
Do you
you know,
miss
if I was having to conform to anything, it was
Yeah.
like to keep people from throwing beer bottles at you on
Right.
stage. You know, and, I mean, for a couple of years, I think I had 4 or 5 songs, and that was it. And I would just play them over and over and over, and people
Yeah.
never knew the difference. You know,
Yeah.
you had 2 slow ones, a medium tempo, and a fast one, and you can just keep rotating them. And as long as people were dancing and there were
Right.
beer sliding across
Keep
the
it-
bar, you can get a gig. You
Keep
know,
it
so,
moving.
Yeah.
But do you kind of? I mean, that's the climb, you know, and you're at this place now where it just seems like you're doing really well. I mean, do you miss that kind of climb, or do you always feel like you're reaching for something else?
Yeah, I feel like I don't really feel like I'm a very competitive person to say, and like especially when I'm kind of thinking about success. You know, the success is, to me, is not really material things or money or anything like that. It comes in different forms of just happiness and family and having people around. So, and I've never had very big high expectations in this business for myself in the first place. So, I just. I don't know. I just kind of take it one step at a time, you know, and I feel grateful for the opportunity to get out here and play for people if they want to hear the songs, and but I also want to get better, you know, as I go and keep learning new things. I learn something new with every song and every album, and you know, become a little bit more courageous each time and try to push the limits of what I can do, and so I want to keep growing if I'm going to keep doing it. Yeah.
Have you had to, I guess, separate reality from what's not real? Are you able to do that with people too?
Well, every bit of it's surreal in a way, you know.
Yeah.
I remember being, you know, when I was starting out around New Braunfels and Austin area, I had the opportunity to meet Ray Wiley several times and open up some shows and play around. And it was guys like him and Guy Clark and these guys that really kind of set that example for me when I was younger and starting out. You know, I watched those guys a lot, and I thought, you know, if I'm going to do this for a living or have a career, I was like, this is, you know, I want to kind of go about it like these guys. I always had a lot of respect for them and admired their integrity, you know, a lot, and what they stood for and what they spoke up for. But yeah, traveling all across the country, all over the world, it's like it doesn't matter where you live, you know, you have these different bubbles and pockets of things and people and what you experience. And I always tried to kind of look at things from outside of the box, you know. I'm traveling so much, you're kind of forced into doing that, and you're not into it. You're constantly out of your comfort zone. You know, you don't have time to kind of fall into this thing and ignore what's around, you know, the realities that are swirling around you. You know, you're constantly jumping into these different environments and like seeing things with your own eyes. You're not necessarily just hearing about them on the news and you know, hearsay from so and so and so. You're seeing those dark alleys and those dark characters on the streets and you know, whatnot. You know, that list can go on forever. But
Well, did you hesitate to kind of speak up politically or not? I mean, did you feel like you needed to? I know you played for Beto. 2020 is coming up. Did you feel like you needed to speak up? You know, just in the song you were singing a minute ago, you know, talking about children being separated from their parents, and so much of your life has been impacted by the border.
yeah.
You know that life. So, I mean, did you hesitate to talk about politics or not? I mean,
I don't know about hesitation, but it was more of a just I don't know. I'm not a firm believer in like getting out and preaching to anybody or telling anybody what to do or how they should think or how they should feel. I think everybody, you know, has the right to make up your own mind and your opinion, but also you have the right to speak up about it too. And I think just some of the rhetoric on the street of hearing kind of grown men and women, how they are talking to kids and talking to each other, and you see it every day on social media and things. And just the language that people use is just a bit disturbing to me. You know, I was very taken aback by that, and having kids of my own now, you know, not wanting them to grow up and ask me like why I never did anything or why I didn't say anything about that, you know, and at least make an effort to create a better future for them to have when they grow up. I remember being a young kid from a small town, growing up in West Texas and southern New Mexico, where the opportunities and the possibilities to get out and live in different ways were very limited, you know, in art and music and different things like that, where it's kind of a doorway to this other world that, you know, that opened my mind up to kind of some different things. And if there's a young kid out in some small town right now that, you know, may be curious about some other things that are going on in the world, and I can inspire them to speak up and have a voice. And I know that I've had people do that for me, you know, and so I try to set that example for them as well.
It's a wonderful thing to be a kid that comes up from some very certain ways of thinking. I mean, you know, like when I was growing up, I didn't think like a journalist that I could actually really be one. I mean, like, how do you do that? Like, I don't know any journalists, so how do you do that? You know, how do you go out and be an artist? But kind of finding your way, there's something so powerful in that. For you, is your family your greatest accomplishment? Is that where you get your greatest joy from?
Every bit of it, you know. I lost a big chunk of my people at a young age, so I know what it's like to lose part of that. And for a long time, it didn't really matter any kind of success that I had. That didn't take the place of that, you know. And so now having kind of rebuilt a family of my own, and it's the most important thing of all, you know. And like all this other stuff is just, you know, a bonus, you know. It's like, I feel lucky to get out here and play songs for people, and I'm elated that they enjoy the songs and they want to hear them and they get something out of them. But at the end of the day, if I didn't have all that to go home to, then I probably wouldn't be out here doing it.
It changes your perspective when you become a dad and a husband. I mean, it kind of, it's like, dang, what did I do with all my time and money before that?
Yeah.
It's like, wow, it gives new meaning. So this new album, two things, just, you know, talk about kind of the new platform of Yellowstone, how much you enjoy it, what that's kind of like for you. I was like, dang, I have to wait till like February for it to come back on. That's a long time. But talk a little bit about that, what you enjoy about it, and kind of this new album, what you're looking forward to that with.
The album is, I'm really looking forward to the album. There's just kind of a mix of there's just, you know what I tell people, it's a mix of, you know, love songs and murder ballads in a way, you know.
Oh, love, there's a thin line.
Yeah, there's a thin line. And so it's fun to experiment with them with a full band and the backup singers and the whole thing on the record. But then every one of the songs I can sit down just with an acoustic guitar and then play, and it's a story, you know. So it's, I'm looking forward to just playing these songs live. I think the show's going to be a blast, and we've got a great band on the road. And so on that side of it, the Yellowstone stuff, or the film acting stuff, it's been really interesting. It's just such a different creative outlet that I think that I haven't experienced playing music before. It's really made me a lot more comfortable playing music on stage, you know, and just a way to, you know, express yourself in those different avenues, and also kind of portraying different characters that aren't necessarily myself. You know, a lot of these songs tend to be fairly personal and autobiographical and things like that. So kind of reliving through some of these moments on stage, singing about them every night, can get tough sometimes. And the acting world, it's like it's somebody else has written, you know, the script, and there's this character, and it's a whole kind of other persona in the world that I can kind of jump into, and it's just really been a lot of fun to do. So, you know, I've enjoyed it.
You know, you are so open and vulnerable. You know, was there ever a time when you're like, I don't really want to share my story, or I don't want to really talk about certain things, because they can bring you down sometimes, and you know, you don't want to live in, you know, in that hard place or that dark place all the time?
I'd say probably the first half of my career I was like that, you know. It really snuck up on me, because you know, talking about writing a lot of songs that I never really intended to play for anybody, and a lot of the places that I played, people weren't necessarily listening to what I was saying, so I was just kind of felt like I was floating underneath this stuff. But I enjoyed playing in the bars and playing music, but it wasn't until I started playing shows kind of like this, where people were sitting down and they were dead quiet and listening to what I had to say, and I got super just insecure, and you know, I'd pull my hat down like this and sing at the floor, and you know, and it was tough for a long time and I didn't really connect with the audience very much. You know, I was scared to talk to them as well, just to have conversation and tell stories about what they were from. Very insecure with myself until, I don't know what it was, just I guess maybe getting a little older, a little bit, you know, more secure with myself, and and the more I would talk to the crowd, and the more that I would get kind of feedback with them, and the encouragement that they would give me of what the song meant to them, and how I felt, and how I realized that it was actually kind of an important thing, and people weren't out there just judging me. They were really fans of the songs, you know, and they wanted to hear them, and I got something out of them. And so I think it just took me a while to realize that. And once I did, I started engaging more with people and talking about it, and seeing how it helped them, and then also it helped me a lot. Discover a lot about myself and why I wrote the songs, and so they helped me get through it just as much, you know.
I've heard your story, and you know, it sounds like, and I don't know if it comes with age too, but you know, you talk about your parents and you say that they were good people. I mean, as you get older, do you sometimes put yourself in their shoes at all? Or I know, like my dad's passed, but I was so angry at him for so long, but it wasn't until I kind of went through some of the same life experiences as him that I thought I had compassion for him.
Yeah.
You know, how do you kind of move forward with those emotions? Because when they've passed, that's kind of the end of that. You can't really say anything to them. I guess you can through your songs. But.
Yeah. I definitely am conscious about that, you know, especially with kids making different kinds of decisions, and you know, and then also learning, like, man, that was pretty messed up what we were doing when I was a kid, you know. But at the same time, I do have compassion for them and where they were from, and you know, how they were raised, and maybe just what they went through as kids and growing up, and the kind of social circles and things like that society, those kinds of pressures and things like that, and that age. But you know, I don't know. You know, there are a lot of unanswered kind of questions of would things have been a little bit different if they would have did this or did that, and you know. But at the end of the day, here we are. You know, circumstances lead to where we are at the moment, and yeah, it's still tough. A lot of still, you know, it's one of those things that never goes away, and you don't. I don't try to live with ignoring it. I live by kind of just living with it, if that makes any sense, you know. Like, I don't feel like you can move on by ignoring it. You just have to learn to live with it, and just realize it for what it was, and try to understand it the best I can. And
move forward. And be the best dad you can be. To your kids, and I'm sure you get a lot out of that. Do you have a certain kind of philosophy or way you approach, you know, life? I mean, you know, is there any good advice anybody ever gave to you that you really take to heart?
Drive fast and run over shit, you know.
That's not bad.
Stay in school, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot, you know. I'm trying to think of something just right off the hand.
Well, did someone intervene with you? Did someone take you by the hand? Did somebody show you the way, or did you just have to make your own way, you know?
A lot of it I had to make my own way. You know, I was fortunate. I think my grandmother was probably one of the biggest. Now I realize that more now than ever. You know, I think I was maybe kind of 13 or 14 at the time when I went to live with her for a while, when things were kind of, you know, not well at home, and she was kind of the only one that was ever really strict with me. You know, that kind of like, you know, no, we're not doing this, we're doing this right here, and just kind of gave me some stability, you know, and I realized that more than ever, I always looked up to the men in my life, cowboys. My grandfather was a rancher, my uncle rode bulls, and you know, that's all I ever wanted to be growing up. And but now and more, I've realized that I've probably learned a lot better lessons from the women in my life than them. But yeah, I think that stuff stuck with me, but at the same time, I think losing my parents at a young age, that I didn't, and I went on my own as well, away from all the family. I didn't really have anybody influencing me as like who I need to vote for, or what kind of religion should I follow, or who should I date, or like anything. I was just kind of out in the world and seeing things for myself, and I was left to kind of come up with my own opinions on my own, you know? It's like I didn't have anybody kind of guiding me into thinking a certain way, or, you know, anything like that, and manipulating me, and it was just kind of like, here it all is, how do you feel about it? What do you think about that, you know? And I was like, I don't like that, I don't like that, that's wrong, you know, but saying I feel like I had a sense of kind of right and wrong, you know, and things, and I knew trouble wasn't a good thing to be in all the time. I didn't have anybody to bail me out if I did get into trouble, you know, so I learned pretty quick kind of how to avoid that as best I could, and just had to rely on my gut feeling, you know, at those times when you had to turn left or right, you know.
Yeah. I've heard you talk about, you know, kind of being the new kid at school and having to stand and fight for yourself. Aren't you glad you're not a teenager anymore? Aren't you glad you're not having to deal with that anymore?
Yeah, school just terrified me when I was a kid, you know. Yeah. And then I look at, you know, you go back and look at some of these schools, they look like penitentiaries, you know. It's no wonder.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
They were. That's what they felt like, you know.
Yeah.
Or where I was going to school it was. I'm sure it's different in some places, but yeah.
It wasn't a good positive experience.
No. Not one bit.
So what is your biggest dream?
My biggest dream?
Yeah.
Shoot, I don't know. I feel like I've kind of done everything I've ever wanted to do, you know. Like even with the music stuff, when I very first started playing music, I had this kind of old truck with a camper on it that I was sleeping in quite a bit, and I was, you know, I just felt, shit, if I can go make $100 playing at the bar and tips, that's more than I'm gonna make building fence for somebody out in West Texas all day. And so I was like, I made it, you know, I'd made it from that point on, and everything else is just like, you know,
amazing.
Been added on top, but being a dad and having a family, that's like hands down the best.
Well, I want to leave you with something. I don't know if you ever read. Do you ever read? Do you ever read the comments that people leave on your songs?
Not that often, I don't.
Well, you know, I've learned as a news person to never read the comments. Because then I'm like going to get into a fight with somebody or, you know, whatever it is. But let me read you a comment that somebody wrote. He said, his voice is soft rust, slowly flaking away on a once beautiful, shiny, classic truck. That's the best way I can describe his voice and his sound and subtle grace. A dusty throat whispering our small town secret, American fears and courage. I mean, it feels like you don't do anything that, you know, it's like you're not the kind of guy that's just going to talk about the weather. I mean, it seems like the things that you talk about really make a difference in people's lives. So thank you for the music.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Texas Voices features the artists, musicians, and creatives in our great state. Subscribe to the podcast for new episodes, or watch Central Texas News Now on Roku, or download the mobile app.